was Memorial Day weekend, so my friend group rented a lakefront house for the weekend 3 hours away from home. It was cheap because it was in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina. It was Callie, Jamie, Crystal, Rich, Adam, and myself. We all piled into Adam's truck. I was the one to find this place on Airbnb. What was most appealing about it was the big deck with the hot tub on it that overlooked the lake. There was also a fire pit right by the water with a bunch of Adirondack chairs around it. Everything about it seemed perfect for a few days and nights of getting wasted with some friends. The Airbnb host told me that when we got to the property, there was a hidden key behind the mailbox to unlock the front driveway gate. The driveway was made of gravel and dirt, and it cut through a small opening in the woods, bringing us slightly uphill to a bigger opening where the house was. Adam parked the truck right next to the front deck. The deck wrapped around the entire house. It was pretty cool. The first thing I did was walk to the back part of the deck and look at the view of the lake. It was very beautiful and peaceful. Too bad we were about to be blasting music and partying. Right as we were done unpacking, everyone cracked open beers, and we wasted no time letting the weekend begin. We played beer pong, cornhole, barbecued, and blasted music for hours. We were really loud because, as far as we knew, this was the only house around here. It's not like there were any nearby neighbors to complain. The phone connection out there was very spotty, so we really were just living in the moment, socializing with each other, not distracted by social media and whatnot. As it was getting darker and we were sitting by the fire pit, we all got startled when a voice came from the edge of the woods. It was some middle-aged woman with short hair. She started yelling at us to lower the music, so someone lowered the volume of the music, and the woman started more or less lecturing us, saying how we out-of-towners always come here and litter in the lake and create nothing but noise. She seemed like genuine white trash. I apologized on behalf of all of us, and one of the girls asked the woman if she lived nearby and if she could hear the music. The woman responded still in a yell that she couldn't even hear herself think. She didn't acknowledge the other question regarding if she lived nearby. Then she just walked away into the woods, like literally into the dark woods. It was so strange. When we were sure she was out of earshot, we all erupted into laughter. As bizarre as the encounter was, we had to make light of it. But it also did put a slight damper on things, considering we thought for sure we were far enough away from any neighboring houses to blast music and be loud. But we continued to drink, and pretty soon that concern was forgotten about and we got loud again. Some immeasurable amount of time passed before a song ended and it went quiet for a second, and we heard a voice calling out from the lake. We paused the music and listened, and sure enough, a voice was calling out for help in the middle of the lake. We all looked at each other nervously. I stood up and went to the water and yelled out, "Who's out there? Are you in the water?" The voice called back, "Yes, help." Adrenaline started to kick in. There was a kayak leaned up against the deck by the water with 2 sets of paddles. Adam and I agreed to paddle out there in an effort to save whoever was out there. We yelled out at them to keep calling out, but as we got in the water, the calls seemed to get further away, no matter how deep we got into the lake. After like 5 to 10 minutes of rowing out to the complete darkness of this lake, calling out repeatedly for that man we heard, there was just utter silence. All we could see were the lights from the house sitting at the edge of the lake, and then just darkness in every other direction. It was only the sound of the light splashes of water, and then screams. Female screams coming from the direction of the house. They sounded gut-wrenching, like genuine screams of danger. It sounded like more than one, at least 2 of the girls' screams. We immediately started paddling back, even more panicked now. The screams stopped long before we got back to the shore. We screamed out for our friends, but we checked inside and outside of the cabin, and all 4 of them were gone, vanished without a trace. We tried texting and calling them, but we had no bars, of course. Adam's truck was still there, so we took it and drove up the road, looking for the nearest neighboring house, and we found it. A similar opening in the woods that led up a hill and onto a property, where we saw a house with the lights on. We went to ring the doorbell multiple times. No one ever answered. We went to look through one of the windows in the front, and what we saw sent chills up my spine. We could see clear as day into the living room. There was a lamp on in the corner, and in the middle of the room, somewhat close to the window, was that trashy woman we saw who came and yelled at us before. She was standing still, doing nothing, just facing the window looking out at us. She had a borderline angry-looking expression. We yelled asking for help, but when she wouldn't move, we were too creeped out to stay there and left. As we got back in the truck, about to drive to another house, my phone started vibrating, and it was Rich calling me. Thank God. I picked up and asked where they were, what happened, but I could barely get a word in, as Rich said there were two men with axes in their hands, wearing masks over their heads, walking towards them out of the woods, hence why the girls screamed, and they all ran away down the road. One of them was currently on the phone with 911, and they were waiting it out in the woods right on the side of the road. It wasn't long after that the call disconnected, and I wasn't able to reach him again. So we waited on the side of the road not far from the house, and when we finally saw flashing lights coming down the road, we waved them down and asked them to help us find our friends first. So we drove up the road until we saw our friends come out from the woods waving their hands. We scooped them up and followed the police back to the house. But here, we collected all of our belongings, as Rich and the girls all frantically recounted what they had just went through. The Airbnb was oddly enough not broken into from what it seemed, and none of our stuff was taken. There was no sign of any men with axes. We also told of the cries for help in the lake, which I believe prompted a search team coming to the scene, but by then we were already long gone out of that place. We never looked back. After much persistence and battling with Airbnb and the host, we got our money back for the stay. Well, most of it. None of us could ever figure out this situation, like if it was all a trap, if the calls for help from the lake were linked with the men approaching the house with the axes, if that woman was also affiliated somehow with this. Was it just to scare us out of there, or were they really going to attack us? I don't know, I don't care. I just don't do remote places anymore after this, and I know the girls won't ever either. It was Memorial Day weekend of 2021. The world was recovering from COVID. Everyone was looking to celebrate. That included my friends and I. Our friend Jacob has a really nice big boat. Well, his dad has a big nice boat, but Jacob gets to use it. The lucky bastard was born into a lot of money. We do reap some benefits from being friends with him though. Out in the bay was a big boat meetup planned for Memorial Day, so our core group, Tony, Mikey, and I all met up at Jacob's house on the water, and we took the boat out from there to meet up with Jacob's other boat friends. There were a bunch of boats tied together in a shallow part of the bay, and everyone was hopping from boat to boat and walking around in the water with drinks in hand. I was getting really drunk along with everyone else, and unfortunately, I'm including Jacob. No one really realized until it was too late that he had way too much to drink, and he was not okay to drive the boat back home. I told him to sleep it off in the cabin, so he went down to sleep. It started to get dark after so many hours of drinking and mingling with other boat people, and one by one, the other boats left. We were the last boat left, just the four of us. I went to go check on Jacob, and he was knocked out still. We had to stall for hours with each other until he finally woke up, and he did seem more sober now, so he started to slowly drive the boat back in the direction of his canal. On the way, we noticed the lights of another boat seemingly following us. Jacob started freaking out, thinking it was the Bay Police. He didn't want to do anything suspicious like speeding up or slowing down, anything that might draw attention, so we kept our speed steady. We made it to the canal, and he lives about 5 minutes up the canal. The boat behind us was still following us up the canal. Jacob was really starting to freak out, worried he'd get a DUI and lose his license, and of course his dad killing him. The canal's a no-wake zone, so we had to slow it down even more as we went down the canal. The boat behind us was catching up to us. At this point, we were fully expecting the boat to be a police boat. We started discussing a story to stick to, that we took the boat out and just hung out on the bay. We started hiding all the beer cans, ready to lie completely about having had any beer. We got to Jacob's dock, and he looped the boat around to align it next to it. He did it pretty smoothly for someone who was intoxicated. The boat that was tailing us the entire time approached, and as it began to pass us, we realized it wasn't a police boat at all. It was just a random boat. And Jacob said out loud, "Who the fuck is this?" He knows everyone on his canal, and he said he'd never seen that boat. As it directly passed us, We saw 3 men standing on the back of the boat looking at us. It was honestly in a very aggressive way. Jacob taunted them and said, "What?" None of them responded. Their boat passed us, and they continued to watch us. While we were all relieved it wasn't the police, Jacob was now nervous as to why they followed us all the way down the canal, when they don't even live on this canal. I said perhaps it's someone visiting a friend's house for Memorial Day, and he reluctantly agreed and said could be. He tied up the boat to the dock, and we helped the best we could. He said he'd clean it tomorrow. We all went inside of his house. His parents weren't home this weekend. He had the place to himself, so we suggested throwing a last-minute pool party, but it was already like 10 o'clock, and there wasn't really any chance of throwing anything big that last minute. So the 4 of us went back outside to just hang by the pool, continuing to drink, with all of us planning on crashing at Jacob's place for the night. That boat passed by the house again within maybe 10 minutes, and that's when we really got suspicious. The men on the boat again stared at us, and this time Jacob said nothing. The night became a daze at some point after this. My memory gets really foggy as I guess I blacked out. The next thing I remember is waking up with extreme cottonmouth in the middle of the night. At first, I thought the unbearable thirst I was feeling was what caused me to suddenly wake up, but I was very wrong. I looked around the room and saw Tony and Mikey on the couch as well, sleeping. I went to the kitchen to drink some water from the faucet like a water fountain. That's how thirsty I was. But in the kitchen, I was met with someone else, dressed in a cliché all-black robbery outfit, including a black ski mask, and he was clear as day holding a gun. I didn't scream. He aimed the gun at me and told me not to make a sound. An unexplainable feeling, knowing that my existence could have ended at any given moment and everything would turn black, washed over my body. He said to me in a quiet voice, "Where is the owner of the house?" I whispered, "I don't know." He asked me where the owner's bedroom is, and I shakily said, "Upstairs." He had me lead him upstairs as he was behind me with a gun to my back. He threatened to shoot me if I made any sudden moves or calls for help. It was when I got to the top of the stairs that I realized there were 2 men behind me, not just one, both of them in the same all-black robbery attire. I really didn't want to, but I led them to Jacob's room, where he was passed out sleeping as well. The 2 men shut the bedroom door and had me wake Jacob up without making a commotion. Jacob came to reality, looking around the room, and momentarily freaking out before one of the men got closer to him with the gun in his face, telling him to be quiet. This was when the man with the gun pointed at Jacob demanded to know where the safe was. Jacob's family's loaded, and their house is huge, along with their boat, and it's common for rich families to have safes somewhere in the house. Jacob led the 2 men and myself to his dad's room, to a certain closet, and at this point, they forced him to call his dad to get the combination. Jacob explained to his dad that we were being held at gunpoint and he needed to give the combination, and so Jacob's dad complied. The 2 men took all the contents inside of the safe and put them into a bag. This included savings bonds, cash, jewelry, and various important documents. After this, they ran out of the house. We didn't hear a car speed away or anything, so they must have had a getaway vehicle further away, not on the block. But after posting on multiple outlets, including the Ring Neighbors feature, and reporting it to local news outlets, no one really could identify the 2 men. I think it's fairly safe to say those men on the boat followed us to find out where Jacob lived, since it was a very nice boat, and they must have seen potential dollar signs. I'd never been so scared in my life. I actually could have been killed if I made one wrong move.